Imagine this, it's spring, your garden is thriving and your first harvests are ready to be picked. And then one day you step outside and it's all gone. Slugs. Just a few of these pests can wipe out months of hard work overnight. Sound familiar? You're not alone, because last year slugs wiped out gardens worldwide and they caused millions of dollars in lost crops. But here's the good news, you can stop them before they strike. Today I'm going to give you 12 proven hacks that will help you to drastically reduce the numbers of slugs in your garden. Stick around to the end for a defense system that will keep your garden thriving all season long. And hey, if you find these hacks useful, click that subscribe button and don't forget to like this video. Let's get into it. Slugs love dark, damp places to hide during winter, and fallen leaves, weeds and debris are their favourite places to hide. Clearing these out not only tidies your garden, but exposes those slugs to cold, and it significantly reduces the population. While clearing, dig lightly in areas where slugs were a problem, because they lay their eggs just under the surface, and digging lightly will bring those up to the surface where the frost can kill them, and this significantly reduces the hatching rate. Many gardeners will leave debris around compost piles or heaps and around fences, and these can become slug havens, so you should really clear those out completely as well. Mulching with a sharp material like diatomaceous earth can stop the slugs moving back into that area, and if you don't have frost in your area, it's really important that you do this. Did you know that slugs are active all through winter, so setting traps now can really make a big difference come spring? Put things down like cardboard, planks, citrus halves as hiding spots. Check your traps every few days and dispatch those slugs, so either give them to the birds, chickens, or even drop them into a bucket of soapy water, and that will take care of them. So here's a DIY task for you. Take a can and bury it in the garden and fill it with some cheap lager. The slugs are attracted to the east and they will fall in and drown. And then you can compare that to maybe putting down some citrus halves and using those and see which one works best in your garden. And why fight slugs alone when nature can help? Birds, frogs and hedgehogs are your best allies. So now what you should be doing is putting up some bird boxes in your garden to start with. Winter is tough for birds, and if you start to feed them, then they'll remember your garden as a safe haven when spring comes. So consider creating habitat for frogs and hedgehogs. A simple log pile, a small pond, or even a homemade hedgehog home, which is a really good project to do with kids, can set up this habitat perfect for these animals. And did you know that a single hedgehog can eat over a dozen slugs in one night? Avoid using chemical slug repellents and opt for organic options, because we need to protect the local predators and keep the food chain intact. And here's a fun fact for you. Did you know that hedgehogs have been around for over 15 million years, making them one of nature's oldest predators for our slugs? And other ways to protect your garden is by using barriers. Now, copper tape can be used to go around beds, pots and trays, and it creates a mild electric shock when slugs cross them. And it's better to have two of these barriers rather than a single barrier. And another way would be to use sharper objects like gravel and pine needles. Now, I know what you're thinking, slugs will crawl across these, but if there are alternatives, they would much rather take those instead of crawling over the sharp objects. Here's a pro tip. Consider using a multi-prong attack. So something like the copper tape and the sharp mulches, or even some sort of mesh, can really help. And studies suggest that copper tape interferes with the slime secretion, which can prevent the mobility for slugs. And that would make this well worth investment in your garden. Now, I know what you're thinking. I've seen slugs crossing copper tape, it doesn't work. But if you stick around to the end, I'm going to give you an adaptation to this that will not only work, but also stops those slugs from coming back. Did you know that some plants can naturally repel slugs? This process is called companion planting, and it's not only effective, but it's beautiful too. Aromatic herbs like rosemary, sage and lavender can keep slugs away while enhancing your garden's aesthetics. Plant these herbs around vulnerable areas in your garden like lettuce beds, and nasturtiums and marigolds also make fantastic additions and add a pop of colour to the garden. Slugs are deterred by the strong scent, and they also attract in beneficial insects, which can also help with the pest issues in your garden. The timing of when you water your garden can severely impact the slug activity. Watering in the evening creates the perfect conditions for slugs to thrive overnight, and this leads to increased plant damage. Instead, water in the morning so it has time to dry through the day, and this brings out conditions less conducive for slugs to thrive. And consider using drip irrigation, because drip irrigation has a small entry point that drives water down and it spreads underground. The surface remains dry, and this will keep that surface dry. Slugs don't like that as much and they prefer to go elsewhere. Another thing you could consider would be to monitor this over wet and dry, and maybe keep notes in a journal, so you've got a little test going on in a wet area and a dry area, and see which one does best. And one gardener I know, they reduced the slug population by over 40% just by changing their water schedule from evening into morning, and that protected their lettuce beds for the whole of the season. Eco-friendly baits like cornmeal, bran and oatmeal can be used to protect crops as well. Simply sprinkle these around crops that are vulnerable, and the slugs are attracted to the smell and they'll consume those and die because of dehydration. And be sure to replace the bait after a rain, because once it's been saturated it becomes less effective. And if you want to protect high value crops like lettuce or spinach, then a ring right around that crop with these will really help. Pro tip: combine this with other approaches like the beer traps or citrus halves and create a multi-layered approach, because by doing this, you can really enhance the success rate. And consider where you're placing them as well, because we all know that slugs like shaded areas. Here's a fun fact: unlike chemical repellents, you're being eco-friendly here, so they are safe for pets and other animals. So not only are you protecting your garden, you're protecting the environment as a whole. Not all insects are pests. Some are great allies in the battle against slugs. Ground beetles, for instance, they're a natural predator of slugs and their eggs. So encourage these into your garden, so you're not only protecting your garden, but the whole ecosystem around it. Here's 3 simple steps to attract beneficial insects into your garden. Number 1, you want to create areas that are undisturbed with a natural mulch or plants around. Number 2, avoid using pesticides, which can harm the good insects as well as the bad. Number 3, plant native flowering plants that help support the pollinators and bring in those predatory insects. And did you know a single ground beetle can consume up to 50 slugs per day? That's like having an army against the slugs when you have these in the garden. And a bonus tip is other beneficial insects can help control pests in the garden, things like rove beetles and ladybugs. So set up bug hotels in the garden that will house these and attract them in. A sacrificial zone is a clever way to protect your main plants by planting plants like lettuce or spinach in areas that will take the slugs away, and these are sacrificial, quick growing, and you're able to replant them as the slugs eat them. But this can take slugs away from areas you don't want them in. And this is how it works. You plant these sacrificial plants away from your main garden, and you check it regularly, and when the slugs move in, you remove them in the early morning and take them away, like we dispose of them like we mentioned earlier, dropping them in a bucket of soapy water or feeding them to the birds. Going down that multi-layered approach, add things like citrus halves and beer traps into the sacrificial garden to help you to eliminate those slugs there as well. You're doing a multi-layered attack here, and it's really effective. And one gardener's tip is to move the sacrificial zone every single year. It prevents the slugs building up long-term patterns, protects your main crops, and it keeps them guessing. Homemade slug sprays are also a great deterrent to use while keeping your garden organic and safe for other animals. And here's a basic recipe. Garlic spray recipe. Crush a few cloves of garlic and steep them in water overnight. Strain the liquid into a spray bottle and add a teaspoon of dish soap. Spray it on the leaves and soil around your plant. Garlic isn't the only option. You can use chili powder, white vinegar, or even essential oils like peppermint will all work as a slug deterrent. What I would do is test which one of these is more effective in your garden. Reapply this after any rains and combine it with everything else we've spoken about for a really comprehensive defense system. You know, think of your garden as a spicy marinade to keep those unwanted pests out. Slugs are mainly nocturnal, meaning they're most active at night, usually when you're fast asleep. But if you take this opportunity to go out and patrol, then you can really reduce numbers. What I would do is take a flashlight, a pair of gloves and a bucket of soapy water, and then go out and check the underneath of leaves and in shaded areas where slugs are protected, and remove them, drop them into the soapy water, because by doing this it will save you so much effort and really reduce the numbers because you're out there when they're not hiding. And I would take this opportunity to note areas of concern, what plants the slugs are attacking the most, where they're congregating, and then I would adapt my defences to suit that also. Studies have shown that by removing slugs at night can reduce the slug damage in a garden by up to 30%. That's crazy. And if you've got a real large garden, well, get your friends out to help you and recruit those into a slug collecting party, because you can really do some damage in one night. And remember earlier when we were talking about the slug tape? Well, here's the secret to that. Put 2 bands of tape around whatever you want to protect and connect them to a 9-volt battery. A single wire from each strand going to one terminal of the battery. What this does, it provides a 9-volt shock to the slug only when they connect both of these copper tape barriers. So if they just crawl over the one, then they don't get the shock, but as soon as they touch the other, the circuit is completed, they get a small shock which turns them away from your beds, and it can really make a big difference. And that is how to make the copper tape really work effectively. And there you have it, 12 proven ways in which to protect your garden from the slugs, from natural barriers, eco-friendly baits, and even to the major slug defences of the copper tape and batteries. You now have a way in order to protect your garden and stop those slugs in their tracks. even implementing just a few of these hacks can really help with combating the slugs and give you the thriving garden that you've been desiring. And remember that the small efforts you're putting in now will really pay off big come spring. Now, if you've got value from this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. And if you want an additional 6 ways in which to protect your garden from slugs this year, then this is the next video that you should watch. I'm Tony O'Neill and this is Simplified Gardening.